Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're embarking on a totally fascinating anthropological journey, exploring how a single mythological figure somehow manages to bridge a massive cultural divide. We're looking closely at the island of Sri Lanka to examine the deeply interconnected worship of the goddess Kannaki among the Tamil population and the goddess Pattini among the Sinhalese. It's a stunning example of how ancient mythologies weave their way through history to shape modern identities. Here's exactly what we're going to cover today. We'll start with one goddess, two faiths. Then, the myths of King Gajabahu, her spread across the island, that fascinating birth from a mango seed, sacred games and healing rituals, and finally, how she stands as a symbol of resilience. All right, part one goddess, two faiths. Let's look at multi-religiosity and syncretism in action. So, what are we really talking about here? It's all about syncretism. Simply put, this is the complex blending of completely distinct religious belief systems into one newly shared tradition. It's wild, right? Diverse communities, sometimes totally knowingly, other times not so much, end up finding this common spiritual ground. They basically take a single powerful figure and adapt her to perfectly fit their own unique theological frameworks. You can actually see this divide crystal clear. Up in the north and east, Hindus worship her as Kannaki. She's the fiercely just, outraged widow from the Tamil epic, the Cilappatikāram. I mean, she literally burned the city of Madurai to the ground to avenge her husband's unjust death. But then, down in the south and west, Buddhists revere her as Pattini. Here, she's a profoundly protective mother goddess, deeply woven into the Sinhalese pantheon to guard against disease. It's literally one historical figure, but two entirely different, incredibly powerful expressions of feminine power. Moving right along to part two, myths of King Gajabahu. We're diving into historical roots and arrival narratives. Okay, the historical tension around how she actually arrived on the island, it is palpable. On one hand, you have the ancient Mahavamsa, which maintains absolute silence about any Indian military expedition by King Gajabahu. But then you contrast that with the Rajavalya, a 17th century text, and it describes this epic, forceful invasion. We're talking about his chief warrior, Nila Mahayothya, literally splitting the sea with his club so they could march right into the Chola king's capital. Crazy, right? The sheer scale of this mythological event is what's really mind-blowing. According to the Rajavalya, Gajabahu aggressively secured the release of 12,000 Sinhalese captives that had been taken during his father's reign. But get this, he didn't stop there. He demanded another 12,000 Tamils purely as compensation. That's a staggering 24,000 people brought to Sri Lanka, completely shifting the demographic and cultural landscape of the island forever. But Gajabahu didn't just return with people. Tradition tells us he brought back some highly sacred artifacts from India, too. The most famous of these? The jeweled anklet, or silambu, of the goddess Pattini herself, along with the sacred bull relic and the insignias of the four Devalas. Bringing that single anklet to the island is what firmly established the deep roots of her enduring cult. Now, just to complicate things a bit more, Tamil sources paint a totally different picture. The Cilappatikāram describes Gajabahu's visit not as some violent, sea-splitting invasion, but as a friendly, diplomatic pilgrimage. It actually notes that he personally helped consecrate Kannaki's idol right alongside the Chola king, dedicating themselves to renewed peace. It's a completely fascinating divergence in how history is remembered. All right, on to part three, spread across the island and her overall anthropological footprint. As documented by anthropologists like Gananath Abeysekere, her geographic influence is just massive. Up in the north and east, she rules as the Hindu Kannaki, safeguarding communities all the way from Jaffna down to Batticaloa. Meanwhile, in the west, south, and central highlands, places like Kandy, Badulla, and Matale, she thrives as the Buddhist Pattini. We're looking at a truly island-wide phenomenon here. And hey, this is not just ancient history. It is a living, breathing practice today. After the devastating Indian Ocean tsunami, communities in areas like Panama saw a really profound revival of her worship. It shows just how enduring her psychological importance really is. In times of immense tragedy, turning to Kannaki Pattini became a deeply powerful coping mechanism for the survivors. Her integration into Sinhalese culture is virtually seamless at this point. What initially started as Gajabahu's anklet procession evolved later when King Wimala Dharmasurya I added the Buddha's tooth relic. Today, if you look at the modern Kandiya Sala Perahera, it beautifully weaves both these traditions together. It even caps off with a water-cutting ritual that is a direct echo of Gajabahu magically splitting the sea. Let's shift gears to part 4, Birth from a Mango Seed, exploring Sinhalese Buddhist mythology. So Sinhalese folklore actually visualizes her in 25 different ways, but it focuses heavily on the Sat Pattini, or the 7 divine forms. You've got Jitenda, Saranka, Manimeka, Jingala, Srimala, Ayuranda, and Orumala, and they are said to be born from natural elements, things like water, fire, tusks, and yes, most famously, a mango. Let's take a closer look at this mango myth. According to the Pattini literature, it's a wonderfully Buddhist origin story. The deity Sakra disguises himself as a Brahmin and shoots this massive divine mango. The splashing sap ends up blinding a Pandyan king, who totally panics and throws the mango into the Kaveri River in a golden pot. Eventually, that seed is offered to the Buddha himself, and from it, Orumala Pattini is born. The real takeaway from this reimagined myth is how firmly it anchors her inside Buddhism. Sinhalese literature explicitly identifies Pattini with the future Maitreya Buddha. It even suggests she'll eventually be reborn as a male to achieve full Buddhahood. This is a huge, albeit subtle, shift. It gradually separated Pattini from her fierce, independent Tamil Kannaki identity, folding her completely into a Buddhist cosmological framework. Now for part 5, Sacred Games and Healing Rituals, focusing on performance arts. During the sacred harvest month of Adi, both Tamil and Sinhalese communities throw themselves into these incredibly vibrant ritual games. You have Kombumuri, which is this intense horn-pulling contest. Then there's Polkelia for coconut breaking, Malkelia with flowers, and Dodankelia using oranges. But remember, these aren't just casual village games. They are essential religious performances with immense cultural significance, all meant to honor the goddess. You really have to notice the concept of divine heat here. In these sweltering tropical climates, contagious diseases like smallpox or chickenpox were traditionally seen as the literal physical manifestation of her divine anger. So, to protect their families, devotees meticulously perform cooling songs. They offer water, turmeric, and neem leaves, deeply believing that if they can literally cool the goddess down, it'll bring rain, prosperity, and stop the epidemic in its tracks. These healing rituals are also tied tightly to some truly vibrant folk arts. In the eastern provinces, you'll see traditional dances like the Vasanthan Kuthu, performed to the absolute hypnotic beat of the Uduku drum. Everyone gets involved. Kids, adults, they all dance and sing out the ancient epic of the Cilappatikāram. It's how they make absolutely sure the legacy of Kannaki lives on for the next generation. Finally, part 6, a symbol of resilience. Let's look at the conclusion and her modern impact. When you look at the complex and honestly often heartbreaking socioeconomic realities of post-conflict Sri Lanka, Kannaki Pattani is so much more than just a myth. She is an absolute pillar of resilience. For vulnerable women, war widows, and impoverished female-headed households fighting against systemic issues, this goddess represents undeniable courage. She's a beacon of hope for ultimate justice. Which brings us to our final and maybe most important question. We've seen how Buddhists and Hindus profoundly share this incredible figure, even if they don't always realize it. So, in a rapidly developing world that, frankly, too often leaves the most vulnerable behind, could this shared devotion be a catalyst? Could the fierce, protective spirit of Kannaki Pattini actually serve as the ultimate key to genuine cultural reconciliation for the entire island? It's definitely a powerful thought to leave you with. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.